When you work with pivot tables, you will often find that you want to recreate a particular configuration. You can and should write down the fields and the order in which they appear, but it's far easier to record a macro that configures the pivot table for you. In this movie, I will show you how to record a pivot table macro and pass on some best practices that I have learned from experience. My sample file is record macro 0801, and that is a workbook you can find in the Chapter 8 folder of the exercise files collection. In this workbook, I have a pivot table on sheet 1, and on it I have sum of sales, which is sum of total price here. In this workbook, on the sheet 1 worksheet, I have a pivot table, and on it I have sales for each stock keeping unit or SKU for the wind harvester category. Let's say that I want to record a macro that recreates this position. To do that, I can go to the View tab of the ribbon, and then at the far right side, click the Macros buttons down arrow, and then click Record Macro. That displays the Record Macro dialog box, and here I can type a name for the macro. I will call it Wind Harvester, and I won't worry about a description or anything else. Yep, I'll click OK. And Excel is now recording everything that I do. So the first thing that I will do is clear the pivot table. That allows Excel to start working from scratch. To clear the pivot table, I'll go to the Analyze Contextual tab, and then in the Actions group, click the Clear button and click Clear All. Now I can recreate the pivot table from the ground up. So I'll start by adding category to the rows area. I'll drag SKU or SKU below category in the rows area, and then I will scroll down in the field list and drag total price to the values area. Next, I will format the values area, so I will right-click a cell within the values area within the pivot table. I'll click Value Field Settings, Number Format, and Accounting, and OK. And OK again. And I'm going through these steps fairly quickly because these are all things that I've done elsewhere in the course. Now I need to apply my filter, so I will go to the Row Labels Cells filter arrow, clear the Select All checkbox, scroll down, and check Wind Harvester. Click OK, and I have exactly the configuration that I wanted. So now I can stop recording. I'll go to the View tab of the ribbon, and then click the Macros buttons down arrow, and click Stop Recording. So great, I've created my macro. So I'll go to the Macros dialog box by clicking the main body of the Macros button. And I see Wind Harvester macro is there. I'll click Edit to take a look at it. And there I see all of my code. I don't want to make any changes, and you can see that the code is fairly involved, so you probably wouldn't want to edit anything for fear of making a mistake. I will close the Visual Basic Editor. One final step is that I need to save the file as a macro-enabled workbook. So I will press F12, which opens the Save As dialog box, and you can see that the file type is Excel Workbook. If I were to click Save, well, two things would happen. First, it would be a duplicate name, so I would get an error there. But secondly, it would ask if I wanted to save the workbook with the macro or without. I actually want to change the workbook type, so I will click the Save As Type control, and from the list of available types, I will click Excel Macro Enabled Workbook. Now I can save my file, so I'll click Save, and my file has been saved as a macro-enabled workbook.